Why do you call the radio show the Brian Kilmeade Show? I mean, what is that about?
It's my arrogance and my ego combined together. And I don't know, was your show when you were on the radio, was it called the Mike Huckabee Show?
No, it was called the show with no name host.
Wait a second, can we call that up, please? Do we have a resource room that I can turn to?
But I think it's a good idea for you to go ahead and call it that. This is a fascinating character, one of the greatest in all of American history, and I'm so glad you've written about him because a lot of people don't know the backstory of Sam Houston. The Alamo, singularly, one of the great events of human history. Why?
What attracted me to this story, because Fox Nation, #1, said, Brian, we want you to host this series called What Made America Great. Can you imagine if this country was actually great?
Yeah.
I actually believe we both believe that.
Absolutely.
And one of my first shoots was the Alamo. And I said, great. And while I sat there and I researched, I was fascinated. When I went there and met it and saw it, I realized this is a much bigger story. And Ken Burns, of all people, and yes, I'm name dropping. You can edit that out later because it's your show, Governor. He came up to me and he said, "Brian, what are you doing next after Andrew Jackson?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about doing something on the Alamo, but I'm worried it's plowed ground." He said, "San Jacinto," and I said, "How it ended?" I go, "Yeah." So I said, "What if I told the story, what led to the Alamo? What if I made the Alamo part of it? But most important, let me tell you how it ended." And when you talk about magical things that happen in our country that break our way, so you could say that on some way, somehow, America got out bigger and better, this is another one of those stories, because in the deal that Moses Austin, father of Stephen F. Austin, cut, we were able to put more people into Texas in 10 years than the Spanish put in 300 years. And when they tried, and they were somewhat happy being part of Mexico, when Mexico got their identity. But when they tried to take liberty away from a bunch of Texans, they stood up and they fought back. And it was the way they fought at the Alamo and the length of the battle, with 180 against up to 3,000. And the success they had, even though ultimately, obviously, everybody would be killed and their bodies burned, it delayed it enough for Sam Houston to drill his army, build his army, and shape the battlefield for the ultimate fight would be at San Jacinto, which would last 18 minutes and would be an overwhelming American victory.
You know, it's an extraordinary story. The letter by Colonel William Travis that is on display in the Alamo, I think is one of the greatest statements of valor and duty that has ever been written in human history.
What would you do if you knew you were staring at death?
Yeah, you know you're going to get creamed. You know that.
So he's asking for help.
Yeah.
But he ends it with, by the way, I'm going to fight, and I'm going to fight to the death, victory or death. And he talked about being an American and the way you die. I mean, I open up with a quote from Sam Houston's mom, and I'll just paraphrase it. You go to war, and you fight in the War of 1814, but remember, nobody here gets shot in the back. You get shot in the back. We don't breed cowards. You fight with strength.
His own mother says that.
Mom says that. Don't turn your back on battle and run, man. You better die on your shield. So he's a lawyer. He's in his 20s. He was remaking his life like so many in Texas. And as he's asking for help, when it became clear they wouldn't be coming, he talked about what he hoped for and how he would fight. And my goodness, he did fight that way. And you ask yourself and you check yourself and say, if I am staring down the barrel of a gun, how would I do it? And what I would do is I'd rally troops. And the day before his death, the famous red lines, the line in the sand, when he said, listen, we're outnumbered. They're going to raid any day, and it's going to start. The siege will begin. This is your chance to leave. There's the opening in around the Mexican army. He drew the line. And Jim Bowie, suffering from what we believe pneumonia or something worse, was in the sick bay. And he said, bring me up on a stretcher. And he brought him up on a stretcher just so he could be lifted across that line to say, I'm going to cross that line. I will fight to the death.
You know, I got to say, the Bowie knife, for which Jim Bowie was so famous, was built by a blacksmith named James Black 8 miles from where I was born in Arkansas.
Back then, Governor, if you had that Bowie knife, it would also, he used it a few times to fight to the death.
Yeah.
He was a Navy SEAL before there were them. And part of the reason why people remember the Alamo is because the most famous people on the planet, Americans, were there. David Crockett was there. William Barrett Travis was there. This guy named Jim Bowie was there. And Sam Houston told Bowie, go in there and tell everyone to get out. We're not going to be able to defend the Alamo. When Bowie got there, he looked around and said, these people are so determined, I bet you we can seal up these walls and win. And maybe if he didn't die, if he didn't get stricken with this pneumonia or whatever he got, they would have found a way. But that's the whole thing. You have Sam Houston learning what he learned in 1814 and 1812, fighting under Jackson, and then becoming the commander using all those hard lessons. Courage has got to be calculated. our union is fragile. He learned those things in the War of 1812. He would apply that in 1836.
You said something a moment ago I think is very important. You said that the Texans were getting along pretty well and everything was fine, but when the Mexicans decided they were going to take their liberty away, that war was not about land. It was about liberty.
And I'm telling you right now, the link to today's news is so important because there's a war on history in this country. And that's why what I said is I've put all these books together and I'll go on stages not close to as nice as this, and your audience is much cuter, and I'll talk about our history. And I never thought there'd be an audience for it. But because there's such a pushback and this sober look at what makes an America an exceptional nation that maybe we're not too exceptional, as if we've been digesting propaganda, that's why I think it's important to go back and read your own history. And for me, the best part about this book is the research, because it's almost like walking through a beach with a Geiger counter. You discover new things about our past. Governor, we're not perfect, but our quest to be better is admirable, and no nation has our track record.
That's what I think is important about your books. This one is absolutely a must-read. Folks, it is Sam Houston, The Alamo Avengers. Now, you can find links to Brian's terrific new book, Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers. Get it at all of your favorite booksellers through his website as well, briankilmeade.com. That's where you're also going to find his other books, radio show, live appearances, and a whole lot more. To follow him on Facebook and Twitter, just search for @Kilmeade.